Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is going to be a reading today for the collective. Before I jump into it, I just want to explain how I'm doing this reading because I just came up with a new spread and I think it's kind of cool, and I'll let you guys know. So, I took three different decks. I took the Marseille deck, which is from the 1600s. The minor arcana look like that. I took the Rider-Waite deck, which is the classic deck from the 1900s, and then a newer deck called the Vox Arcana, which is from the last couple of years, and I blended those together, and then I separated out the major arcana into one pile, the court cards into another pile, and then the rest of the minor arcana into another pile. And I'm going to pull one major arcana to show us what archetype we're dealing with collectively, one court card to show us what role we're supposed to play in this, and then three of the rest of the minor arcana cards to give us an idea of action steps of what to expect. And what's interesting is that, so I have 78 times 3, right? So what is that? Almost 300 cards or something like that. I don't know if that's correct. 200 something, whatever. But I pulled almost all Marseille decks, which is the real old energy. So that implies to me that the energy that we're working with right now is something that is long-standing. Like we've laid the foundation for this many, many moons ago. It's like over the course of centuries, this work has been done. And the Major Arcana card that I pulled is the only card that's not from the Marseille deck, and it's from the Vox Arcana. So this is brand new energy showing up, and this is the Hierophant. And this is a really interesting Hierophant. He almost looks like an old tree that's come to life. And if you can kind of see, like, the branches in his head are all decorated with like layers of jewelry and things like that. And this is giving me the idea of a thought form that's been built over the course of, again, decades, generations, not just by ourselves in this timeline right now, but like by ourselves over the course of centuries. And I'm seeing like there's these two bunnies that are at the bottom here, right? And it's reminding me of the idea of Easter eggs. If you're familiar with video games, in video games there's usually Easter eggs that it's like the creator of the game has kind of left these things for us to discover that can, expand the experience or whatever it is. And what I'm seeing is that we ourselves have left Easter eggs for ourselves in this game. And, we might have done it way back in the day with the really old energy. And now it's like it's finally coming to the surface. It's finally coming to life. And with this Hierophant, it's kind of showing me that as the thought form comes to life, right, as Frankenstein's monster starts to get off the table, it's a little intimidating where it's like, what? Could you imagine if you were walking through the woods and a tree stood up that looked like that and came towards you? Would you approach it and welcome it with love? I can't say that I would. I would probably freak out, right? And that's kind of how I'm feeling right now collectively in terms of everything that we're seeing and going through. It's like it's good, it's moving in the right direction, but it is terrifying in a way. And with the role that we're supposed to play, this is the Queen of Cups. And you can see that the Queen of Cups is watching this thought form, this manifestation come to life. And she doesn't exactly seem too thrilled about it, right? There's almost an energy of being kind of like paralyzed by it. And again, it's this thought form that's coming to life is giving me the energy of manifestation overwhelm, almost as if it's like an accelerated Seven of Cups. If you know that energy, like the Seven of Cups can be manifestation overwhelm, everything all at once. And I'm seeing like the way that the Queen of Cups is reacting to it, it's almost like an emotional paralysis kind of energy, which can come from a Seven of Cups. But what I'm seeing is that because it's the Queen of Cups, what this is telling me is that this thought form, this Frankenstein's monster that's coming to life for all of us, I shouldn't use that analogy, but you know what I'm saying, something that we've created, is operated by our emotional body, where like the emotional body is the control panel that operates this thing. So in terms of the moves it makes and the direction that it heads in and the actions that this creature takes. It's based on effectively how our emotions operate it. And I'm seeing almost like, if you can think like a sci-fi movie, whenever there's like a giant robot that's operated by the hero or something, and the hero sits in the little cockpit and operates this giant robot. Oh my God, sorry. I'm seeing that as the Queen of Cups kind of operating this thing, not exactly from the cockpit. I'm seeing it as more of like a remote operation kind of situation, but you get what I'm saying. So that's the overall energy that we're dealing with, right? So this thought form is coming to life, and we're being encouraged to just be conscious and mindful of our emotional energy so that we can steer it in the direction that we want, right? Because if we react to things with fear, I would imagine that that's going to steer it in one direction. But if we react to things with humor, sometimes, like if it is something that's intimidating, sometimes humor is the best way. So on the personal level, I think personally a lot of us are going to be experiencing overwhelm kind of things where it's like, let me use the analogy of being an actress, right? Let's say you're an actress and that's your thing, that's what you want, that's what you've been manifesting forever. And one day you're just going about your business and somebody just pulls you aside and says, I've got the biggest director, producer, whatever in the next room, and they want you to read a script for the biggest role of your life, and you've got 10 seconds to get in there. Go. Even though you've prepared, this is your dream. Would you not freak out in that moment and wonder like, oh, what am I going to do with this? So it's kind of treating it like that, right? It's like we're getting our moment to go on stage and do the thing that we've always wanted to do. But it's still a degree of almost like performance anxiety. Maybe that's the best way to respond to the energy that's coming. So that's what I'm seeing at the personal level in terms of us starting to see what it is that we desire coming in. At the collective level, I'm seeing it in terms of how crazy the narrative has gotten and how frustrating that can be, right? And how we as creator beings need to be very cautious about the energy that we inject into these narratives, because we don't want to empower it, right? Because to designate something as a threat is to affirm that it has the power to destabilize whatever it is that you're concerned about it destabilizing, right? So I personally don't think that any of these narratives are going to destabilize anything for us at a good level. I think ultimately it's going to work in our favor beyond our comprehension, because what's happening right now is beyond our comprehension, right? If you took a time machine back to 2012 and I asked you, what do you think about the global systems? What needs to happen with them? You would respond by saying, tear the global systems down so that no stone lands upon another, and then salt the earth so that nothing can grow there again. That's pretty much what we all would have said. Well, now it's happening, right? And the whole thing is being deconstructed. The tower is coming down, and most likely none of these things are going to go back to what they were, right? But in the same respect, it's like I found myself in the last couple of months having very like conservative thoughts, and I'm not a conservative person, right? But it's like, I guess just be mindful of that too, is that it's like we don't want things going back to the way that they were, right? We might not want things to stay where they are right now, but they're not. It's like I almost feel like we're taking a plane from point A to point B. And when you look out the window, if you look to the left, you see this. If you look to the right, you see that. We're just flying over it, right? But we're flying over the deconstruction because, again, it's like we're in the submarine, we're in the Merkaba, we're not exactly in it. We're like over it, not in it, not of it, something like that. And the reason why I'd like to say that is because of the minor arcana cards that are on the table. The bottom of the deck energy is the Three of Swords from the Rider-Waite deck. And this has become my new favorite card in the game because this is talking to me about, I've been calling this the secret fifth ace in the tarot game, where we know all about, the Ace of Wands and the Ace of Cups and all of those other aces. But those are aces that can get stolen from you, right? I can get my Ace of Wands, my idea, and someone can steal my idea. I can find my Ace of Cups, my identity, my voice, and somebody can steal that from me. I can find my Ace of Swords, my truth, my story, and somebody can take my words and spin them, right? All of those aces can be stolen. The Three of Swords is what I call the fifth ace, the fifth element. It's the multipass. It is the ace that you can only acquire through heart activation. And once you have it, it's yours and it is worth more than all the other aces on the table. And the best analogy for it in our paradigm would be the Purple Heart, right? So the Purple Heart is something that's awarded to veterans who are injured on the front lines of combat. That's the only way you can get that. Raise your hands if you've been injured on the front lines of combat in this game. You know what I'm saying? We probably have a dozen of these each in our possession. So because of that, that's why I think come the eclipse and everything like that, that's why things changed, because we have the multipass, right? It's like we were let into the next level of the game. And I don't think everybody was, right? I think that we're still engaging with people that are at different levels. But that doesn't affect us, because one aspect of the multipass is, if you're familiar with the mythology of Hermes, Mercury, that kind of the psychopomp, he was allowed to go through all of the levels of the game. So he was allowed in Olympus, he was allowed on Earth, and he was allowed in the underworld. And if anybody ever went to the underworld, like, what was it? Dante's Inferno, right? I'm pretty sure that, is it Hermes that guides somebody, or is it Virgil? It might be Virgil. Well, I know in the mythos of Orpheus and Eurydice, Hermes is the one that guides Orpheus into the underworld because of the multipass, right? So we have the multipass. So what that means is, basically what it's saying to me is, don't worry, but it's like, if for whatever reason you have to pass through an underworld space for something, to do something, whatever, it's like, recognize that you're still in your Merkaba and you're just going to pass through it like a submarine, and you're going to be in it, not of it, if that makes sense. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the three minor arcana cards on the table are the Ten of Pentacles to start. So this was the day of the eclipse for me. We leveled up. Ten of Pentacles talks to me about, congratulations, you've made it to the next level of the game. You can call it the save point, the checkpoint, whatever. Then we moved into the Three of Pentacles. And I'm seeing this as almost like, you know how like when you play solitaire, when you win the solitaire, it like does that funny thing. It's like, we won the solitaire, it does the funny thing, and then it changes into this shape, which is the Three of Pentacles. And that is reminding me of the shape of the Three of Swords here, because you can see that there's this heart that kind of goes around this third pentacle up here. And it's mirroring that, right? So it's like, again, being in this Merkaba submarine, in it, not of it. And what's happening underneath here is, this is giving me the vibe of Dolores Cannon's Two Worlds, the separation, blah, 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 where these are the polarized realities, right? So we don't want to be in any polarized reality. I don't want to be in the harsh dark, but I also don't want to be in the harsh light. I want to be in the truth. I want to be in the full spectrum reality. And that's what this is. And it reminds me of the mythos of the gray Jedi, which comes from Star Wars, obviously, that in the beginning, during like the golden age of the galaxy or whatever, when everybody was at peace and Jabba the Hutt was still a friend and it was all good things, there were no white Jedi and black Jedi. It was only the gray Jedi. And then somebody had the brilliant idea to split themselves into pure light. And of course, the consequence of that was creating pure darkness. And it reminds me of like the saying that in order for healers to have an identity, they need to manifest sick people, right? And in order for sick people to have an identity, they need to manifest healers or something like that. There's that duality, right? Where like one is contingent upon the other, versus the paradise realm, which is this kind of quantum third option thing where you don't need either of those, so to speak, right? We don't need healers in the quantum realm because there's no sickness, right? It's that kind of vibe. So again, it's the third option, it's quantum, it's a full spectrum reality, but it's also the idea of, this was something that I started working on years ago, was, could you imagine writing a story where there's no adversary, right? Typically in most books, most stories in general, there's some sort of adversarial force, whether it's a person, place, or thing, that drives the narrative of the plot, right? So in a world with no adversary, what drives the narrative of the plot? And this reminds me too of, there was a reading that Sam did recently. I think it might have been Pisces, I don't know. But Santero was talking about a new character coming into the story that is unlike any character you've ever dealt with before. So I was thinking about that in terms of like a scripting thought exercise. Like, how could you write a character that you don't even have a point of reference for, right? It's like writing a character that transcends language, writing a story that transcends language. And it's like language is the duality here. And I've been thinking about that too in terms of manifestation, where it's like, I almost think that man- that language might be a hindrance to manifestation at this point. It might be obsolete. Like we might have gotten to a point where language is doing more harm than good. And I mean, look at the narrative right now, right? One of the big touchy issues in the narrative is around language, right? And what language you can use in certain ways, and the policing of language and the weaponization of language. When ultimately it's like, if you listen to what people are saying, it's like they're kind of talking about transcending language and getting beyond the duality and getting beyond all of that. But in an effort to get there, it's like we're doubling down on language and making things more restrictive. But it's almost, like I said, it's almost a good thing, because the absurdity of it, I think, is necessary. And this is my thought. If you remember 2016 was the year that the status quo died. We realized that we couldn't just assume that things were going to be the way that they always were. Status quo was over. And reality used to be governed by the principle of Occam's razor. And Occam's razor is the idea that the most logical explanation is the most likely. We've now moved into a reality that's governed by what I call Kanye's razor. And Kanye's razor is that the most absurd probability is the most likely. And all of these things need to be as absurd as they are right now, because it is waking people up, right? For it doesn't matter what political party you're affiliated with or not affiliated with, all of them are at war with each other, right? We expect the right and left to fight one another. We don't expect the right to fight itself. We don't expect the left to fight itself. But it's like the Ouroboros, right? The tail is in the mouth of the snake right now. And that's a good thing. We want to see that because we want all of these things to be dismantled. And ultimately, I think it's a very good thing that things are moving in that direction. But again, it's the turbulences we're going over it. So that's where it comes to the Merkaba, where it's like, if you do get exposed to this narrative, how do you respond to it? Do you validate and empower the narrative by affirming that it is a threat? Or do you disempower and dismiss the narrative by taking the humor out of it, right? I mean, there's a lot of jokes that could be made, so I recommend that. And the rest of this sequence here, so again, we started with the Ten of Pentacles, which was the checkpoint save point. That went solitaire style into this third option that we're currently in, this Merkaba, where we're over it, not in it, not of it, beyond the duality, which we're still allowed to kind of pass through as we need to, right? Because maybe you have to go to a birthday party in the underworld next week or something like that, and you're concerned about it, you'll be fine, right? Because you're in the Merkaba. Just remember that. You'll be fine. But in the same respect, you're going to notice that things are different, right? Where it's like, I've noticed, some underworld spaces that I used to go to, which is mostly like, bars, nightclubs, those kinds of things. It's like, that's the jurisdiction of the underworld. Let's face it. Some churches, okay, it is what it is. But I've noticed that communication is a lot more challenging in these spaces, where it's like, I can't hear what people are saying. They can't really hear me. All of the conversations are very Mercury retrograde-y. It's just challenging. But then even, that's the darker paradigm. But even in like the pure white spaces, it's like talking to a cardboard cutout, or just like, there's nothing there. But then I find myself in this middle space with my people, with my tribe, with all of the ones that I know have made this level up, which is most of my friends, I would have to say. It's like, I really can't think of anybody that I'm close to that I don't think has made this jump, right? Really, everybody that's still in these spaces were people that were peripheral characters for me to begin with, right? I never really actually engaged with these people as like really close friends. This was more peripheral, but it's like I was able to engage with them before the eclipse, and now it's like the signal is just not as clear as it used to be. But that being said, it's like this third space that I found myself is brand new. And so it's like older relationships that have gotten even stronger, but then new characters that come in that are just on my wavelength. And, every time I'm with these people, it's like I'm having my Cinderella fantasy where like birds are landing on me and there's rainbows. And it's like, it's a crazy experience when you're here. And the final card in the sequence that's coming next is the Eight of Pentacles, right? So we started here with the checkpoint, we go through this, and then we're moving towards this, right? Which is, this to me seems like whatever this is finally kind of coming online. But the way that I'm seeing it, because it's Eight of Pentacles, right? So we have the Three of Pentacles, which is the master, and the Eight of Pentacles, which is the apprentice. So we're moving into a new apprentice phase, which is always exciting to me, right? Because the idea is that the student becomes the teacher, and then you become the student again, and then you become the teacher, and then blah, blah, blah. So it's like once you master one thing, you move on to that next thing. And this next thing that I think we're moving on to is like allowing ourselves to play with the simulation around us effectively. Like there's something about this particular Hierophant that's coming out. It's a new paradigm, it's new terms and conditions, it's a new dogma. Things do not respond the way that they used to respond, but we do have to play with it, and we do have to get comfortable with playing with it and comfortable with doing the things that we want to do. Because for whatever reason, it seems like a lot of the things that we want to do are personal fear thresholds for us. Like I'll say doing this, right? I want to do this so bad on YouTube and come out and share, but it is such a fear threshold for me. And like the fear that I've put towards this in the last couple of weeks, it's like every piece of technology I own has been destroyed in the last couple of weeks. Laptop gone, my phone is all cracked up, blah, blah, blah. So many other things happen that were just funny in terms of like blockages. And then the room that I'm broadcasting in right now, right? So I have the blessing of having a spare bedroom in my apartment that I don't even use. This room was just storage. I had nothing on the walls, nothing decorated. And for weeks and months, I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to get on YouTube? And I never once thought, oh, I have an entire room that I could convert into an office. And all of the things that I could possibly need are already here. Excuse me. And I think that that's another example of what's happening here, is that it's like we're so much more prepared than we can give ourselves credit for right now that it's almost laughable. And there's a major Four of Cups energy that's passing through the collective right now of like not seeing the obvious new thing that we're supposed to be moving towards, because we're still kind of stuck in the illusion of obligation of the old way of doing things, right? And what I mean by that is that, in terms of, I mean, I've been talking to all of my friends recently about their business plans and approaching the future and yada, yada, yada. And myself included, I hear all of us saying the same thing, where it's like acting as though there's some sort of obstacle that we need to negotiate. Like I need to do it this way because that's the way I've done it, even though there's actually no obligation to do that, right? Nobody is holding the gun to my head and telling me that I have to do things a certain way, right? Or you've done this in the past, so you need to do that in the future. Or this is the way other people have done it, so blah, blah, blah. And what I can say is over the last 2 years, the bulk of the readings that I've done for most of my clients have been about the energy of trailblazing, where a lot of the readings that I did were for influencers, like, Instagram influencers and things like that, that would go to this. There was a hotel that I worked for doing tarot. I was their resident tarot reader at this very bougie hotel, and they would have a lot of like brand influencer things. So if Sephora was having an event, they would bring in all of these influencers, and a lot of them were very new to fame, right? And new to their success. And the story that came out for just about all of them was, now as I'm telling the story, I'm forgetting what I was going on. The story that was coming out for all of them was remembering that, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Um, maybe it's classified and I'm not supposed to tell it. No, just give me 30 seconds. So all of these influencers were in the process of negotiating their futures. Oh, I'm sorry, the trailblazing energy. There we go. It was about the energy of the trailblazing. So they were all at this precipice in their career where they didn't exactly want to do what they were doing right now, right? It's like they were all influencers that kind of put everything on their social media, but because fragrances took off or something, comparable to Sephora, they kind of got pigeonholed into that particular lane. But they really wanted to do food or they really wanted to do this or that. So the message for all of them was whatever's happening in the future is so brand new that there's no map. It's like you are the trailblazer. So there's no guru for you to look at and be like, well, how did so and so do it? How did so and so? Nobody's done it the way that we're doing it. And what I mean by that is that you're most likely synthesizing different things and turning them into one thing. And that goes back to the idea of, I don't know if I said this at the beginning of the reading, but integrating the shadow, right? Like recognizing that we have shadow aspects of ourselves that need to be reintegrated into this process because they're a part of us. And it's almost like the chariot card energy, right? The chariot has the white horse and the black horse. Both of them need to work together and cooperate and move in the same direction in order for you to go anywhere. So the light and shadow cannot be at odds with each other. But we also can't leave the shadow behind us because we need that to pull us forward as well. So it's a matter of getting everything to work for you. And what I've noticed recently in terms of crossing this threshold and approaching whatever's coming is that there's a stubborn fractal in me. There is an aspect of myself that is terrified that it's going to get left behind. And I think it has to do with a lot of the roles that we've played in older iterations of the Matrix where we had to be in poverty mindset, fight or flight, whatever, these kind of service roles, lower roles that we're not going to be playing anymore, at least in the same capacity. But that aspect of self thinks that it's getting left behind. And it's basically like, I'm almost thinking of it as like the TV show American Horror Story, right? Where every season it's a new script, but the same actors. So it's something like that, where it's like the actor is not getting left behind. I'm not getting left behind, but that role is being retired. That role is obsolete. We still learn the wisdom from it, but we can move on from it. And that's effectively what I'm recognizing in myself is that shadow that needs to be integrated. But shadow does not mean dark, disgusting things. Like that's something that I think is so wrong about the shadow. The shadow means something that's been put into isolation and has gone crazy. So think of like any prisoner that's put into isolation. After a period of time, they snap. And that's what happens to the shadow. So for a lot of us watching this channel, because it's mostly women and men like myself, hey, where masculine energy became my shadow. For whatever reason, I rejected the masculine and I was very uncomfortable with it and I didn't want to integrate it and I had no interest in the divine masculine. It was like toxic masculine was all I knew, all I wanted to hear about, and I rejected the masculine completely. And for a lot of men, especially like, heterotypical men, they reject the feminine, right? So any kind of artistic quality becomes their shadow, those creative sides, those softer sides, because they have to be a particular thing, right? So all of us fall in that same kind of spectrum where it's like aspects of ourselves become our shadow. Your so poverty mindset, abundance mindset. Abundance mindset could be an aspect of your shadow because we've read too many rabbit hole narratives about the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, and now we hate money, and now we hate abundance, and we've made that a demonized thing that we're rejecting and yada yada. And we don't want that because we've put an ick over that energy. We've ickified the energy of abundance or whatever. So it's become shadow. It can be anything. So again, so when I'm talking to us about shadow, I'm really talking about things that should not be the shadow, that have become the shadow. So I hope that makes sense. I am going to go ahead and pull an extended, see what else I can kind of pull out about these shadow cards. I think I'm going to pull an extended. I'll say that much. I think I'm going to pull an extended. If technical difficulties get in the way, you will know because you'll see underneath this video whether or not there's anything. But if you're interested in a personal reading, I found a way that I can send the personal readings via voice note. So that's a lot more exciting than just typing it out. And the reason why I just can't upload them is because for whatever reason, it takes so long to upload anything. I'm trying a different method today with this video to see if it uploads quicker, but we shall see. But if you're interested in those, so I am going to offer long form readings as well. If anybody's interested in a full reading via Zoom, we can definitely schedule that. I'll put that all in the description box. But otherwise, if you're just interested in one card or whatever, all the info is going to be in the description box. So I will see you when I see you. And if there's an extended, I'll see you there. But if there's not an extended, then I will see you at whatever the next thing it is that I do. So I love you all, and thank you for bearing with me. And keep on pushing through that fear threshold. Like I said, this is my fear threshold for whatever reason, is putting myself out there and doing it. So it's like, it doesn't have to mean you're, walking through the battlefield and bending the bullets like Neo. It could just be literally doing what you want to do is your fear threshold. So I hope that gives you some sort of solace. That, I don't know, it's very important for me to like constantly reiterate and remind that it's like, I am so on this same journey as all of y'all. And if there's anything I've learned from getting to work with like some really powerful people, is that, and I don't mean powerful in terms of money, I mean powerful in terms of gifts and abilities, that at the end of the day, we're all just human and struggling with the same exact things all the time. But again, this reality, this thing that's coming up, Frankenstein's monster, it's like it belongs to us, right? It's like we've been creating this thing, and we're going to keep steering it in the right direction. And of course, everything has to go into a little bit of a chaos phase, but that's because there's two states, right? It's chaos and order. And if you're tired of one order and you want another, then you got to go through the chaos phase, right? And I often say it's like, if you want to make a nice if you want to make a nice guacamole, then you got to smash some avocados, right? So we are in the avocado smashing phase, but the guacamole is going to be fantastic. And like I said, if you need uh, uh, um, a thing to hold on to in terms of faith, just remember 4 years ago how scary things got, how close the sword was to our neck, how we all thought that certain potentialities were just inevitable in terms of dark things that were going to happen to us. And, they said it was going to be mandatory, and we got through. It didn't happen. So if we can make it through that, right, when like I said, the sword was at the neck, if we can make it through that, we got this. I ain't worried about this. So I love you all. I hope to see you super soon, and keep it cute. Bye, y'all.